The sound of crystal glasses shattering pierced the air as Mark violently pulled the tablecloth. Our wedding feast tumbled to the ground, the noise of breaking china mixing with gasps from the few guests remaining at our intimate reception. I watched my new husband's face twist with fury, gripping the edges of my white dress as my hands shook. "You'll sign it over now," he bellowed, his immaculately styled hair falling across his forehead as he leaned over the chaos he created. "Every penny of your inheritance needs to be in my name by tonight." Frozen in my seat, my mind whirled back through the rapid events of the past 6 months that brought us here. How had I overlooked the signs? The hasty courtship, his unusual interest in my family's finances, and his insistence on a private, rush ceremony instead of the celebration I'd envisioned. Everything made disturbing sense now. "Mark, please," I murmured, striving to keep my voice steady. "This is our wedding day. Let's talk about this tomorrow when we're both calmer." I felt my mother's pearl necklace growing heaver around my throat, her final gift before cancer claimed her. Mark slammed his fist down on the table, making me jump. "No more delays, Catherine," he declared. "I've waited long enough. I'm calling the lawyer right now. Don't you dare move." He stormed out through the double doors, which banged robustly against the walls. The remaining guests, mainly his business colleagues, awkwardly gathered their things and made a hasty exit, avoiding making eye contact. Only Sandra, my childhood best friend and maid of honor, stayed by my side. She rushed over, her green dress brushing against the scattered rose petals. "Cat, we need to get you out of here," she urged in a low, urgent tone. I suspected something off about him, but I feared ruining your happiness. "I'm so sorry I didn't speak up sooner." In my overnight bag, the manila envelope containing all documentation of my inheritance, including the deed to my family's historic bed and breakfast, was hidden. Mark had been urging me to consolidate our finances and transfer management under his control. Now it was clear why. With trembling fingers, I reached under the table to grab my small clutch. "Sandra, I need you to create a diversion when he returns. Can you do that for me?" She squeezed my hand. "Anything. What's the plan?" Standing, the whispers of my wedding dress brushing the floor, I replied, "I should have done this hours ago, but first there's someone I need to call." I hurried to the bridal suite where my overnight bag was, hearing Mark's voice echoing down the hall, accompanied by another man's voice. Heart pounding, I grabbed my phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. Time was running short, but I held one crucial card that would erase the smug certainty from Mark's face. Gathering my things, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. Mom always insisted I had her strength, her spirit. Tonight, I would prove her right. Hearing footsteps approaching quickened my pulse, but for the first time since the tablecloth crashed down, I felt something beyond fear, determination. Mark believed he had arranged the perfect trap, but he was about to learn he underestimated a door woman. Hacking my essential documents, along with a change of clothes, memories of the past 6 months flashed like a twisted slideshow. Mark's charming smile when we first met at my family's bed and breakfast now seemed a carefully crafted mask. Struggling to keep the business afloat after both my parents passed within a year, it was hard. Mom's rapid, brutal battle with cancer, followed by Dad's heartbreak. The historic Victorian mansion they restored became my home, now my responsibility, burdened by maintenance costs and declining bookings. Mark arrived like a guardian angel during the off-season, claiming to be a business consultant on a retreat from the city. Now, I wondered if he'd researched me long before booking that room. He seemed genuinely interested in the property's history, my stories of growing up there. Business advice he offered appeared natural, helpful, not the calculated manipulation it was. "The hospitality industry is changing," he'd said one morning over coffee, his blue eyes intense with concern. "You need to adapt or you'll lose everything your parents worked for." Fighting back tears, I zipped my bag, recalling how he wove himself into every aspect of my life. Casual suggestions on modernizing transformed into lengthy discussions about joint ventures. Romantic dinners peppered with talks ensuring financial security. Even his proposal, just 3 months after meeting, came with a speech about combining strengths to build a legacy. Sandra appeared at the bridal suite entrance, her expression tense. "He's coming back with someone who looks like a lawyer. What's the plan, Cat?" Pulling out my phone, I showed her the text I'd sent earlier. Her eyes widened. "You sure about this?" she whispered. I nodded, removing my heels and slipping on flats I'd hidden under my dress. "More sure than when I said I'd do 2 hours ago." The hallway echoed with footsteps, both of us freezing. Mark's smooth, convincing voice, once comforting, now sent chills down my spine. You can't hide in there forever, Catherine, he called. Be reasonable. This is best for us for the business. I thought about the document he wanted me to sign, prepared by his lawyer. He'd mentioned it as a formality to secure our future together. Just like he convinced me to delay hiring a new marketing manager for someone he knew or hold off on replacing the aging heating system for a better investment opportunity. Sandra squeezed my hand. Ready? I touched my mother's pearls one last time. Drink, I thought. Almost. There's something else I need. Quickly, from the antique desk where my wedding folder was, I extracted a USB drive hidden in its lining. 2 weeks ago, on Mark's laptop while checking his flight confirmation, I discovered concerning emails. He'd left tabs open, planting the first real seed of doubt in me. Copying everything, dismissing my instincts as paranoia, I now thanked myself for that moment of suspicion. Catherine, Mark's voice was harsher, abandoning charm. Open this door right now. I looked at Sandra and nodded. Time to set our plan in motion. She pulled out her phone, ready to initiate her part. Do it, I whispered. As Sandra enacted her meticulously planned diversion, my thoughts wandered to the person awaiting in Mark's study back at his house. Someone whose presence would unravel his carefully constructed scheme. Sometimes the best defense involves more than escape. It ensures witnesses uncover the truth. The door handle rattled violently. Everything would soon change, but this time I controlled the narrative. The door swung open, Sandra's plan in full effect. The fire alarms, shrill cries filled the building, chaos erupting in the hallway. Enraged at seeing my packed bag, Mark snapped, "What do you think you're doing?" Advancing toward me. Behind him, a nervous-looking lawyer with wire-rimmed glasses clutched his briefcase tighter. Straightening my spine, channeling my mother's tenacity, I retorted, "Exactly what you taught me, Mark, protecting my assets." His laugh cold, calculated. "And how do you plan to do that?" "Everything's in motion. Contracts for renovation signed. New staff hired. Face it, Catherine, you need me." Playing my first card, I pulled out my phone. "Those contracts aren't valid, you see. I never gave you power of attorney." Turning toward the lawyer, "Mr. Peters, isn't it? I believe your firm processed paperwork based on forged signatures." The lawyer's face paled. "Mr. Henderson, you assured me." "She's lying," Mark barked, yet doubt flickered in his eyes. "Show her the documents," he demanded of Mr. Peters, fumbling with his briefcase. Continuing, I said, "I've spoken with the contractors. In small towns, people talk, especially when someone claims representing a beloved business without proper authority." Sandra, she stepped forward. Her phone captured everything that was happening. Every original document had been meticulously copied, highlighting those without Catherine and-39's signature. These were the ones where Mark had attempted to divert the B&B&39's financial accounts into his personal holdings. Mark and-39's facade began to crumble as he hissed at me. "You foolish woman. You can and-39 grasp what you and-39 redoing. The estate is in shambles, beset with loans and unpaid taxes. Without my intervention, you and-39'll lose it all." I felt an inner calm as I retrieved a document from my bag, retorting, "Once again, you and-39 me wrong. Did you think I wouldn't and-39 notice irregularities in the financial records? The funds being covertly drained?" His complexion turned pale. "What are you implying?" "This is precisely what your ex-wife is discussing with the FBI agent in your study," I revealed. The bombshell shattered Mark and-39's composure, and he staggered back as if struck physically. "What did you say?" "Rachel sends her regards," I whispered gently. She was intrigued by the pattern she discerned following our engagement announcement, the same one that led to the closure of her family and-39's eatery 3 years back. A whirlwind romance, hasty marriage, suspicious financial transgressions, I recounted. Meanwhile, the lawyer was retreating, clutching his briefcase protectively. "Mr. Henderson, perhaps we should discuss this further after consulting with—" "Silence!" shouted Mark, his elaborate guise utterly dismantled. He lunged towards me, but Sandra intercepted, advising firmly, "I wouldn't and-39. The phone is still recording, and the police are en route regarding suspected fraud and potential domestic abuse." Observing Mark, it was evident realization set in that he and-39 been outmaneuvered in his own game. Yet I continued, removing my mother and-39's pearls. "Do you know what and-39's ironic?" I asked, my voice steady despite my racing pulse. Had you actually learned about my family and #39's enterprise beyond the $signs, you and #39D have realized that the B&B isn't and #39T the most valuable legacy I inherited. His bafflement was almost laughable if it were an and #39T tragic. What are you speaking about? My mother and #39's lineage owned half of the historic district. The B&B was merely a passion project. The real estate is held in a trust beyond your reach. Even if I had signed your documents, I explained sadly. Yet, you were too ensnared in your scheming to notice that the woman you wedded was more than just a struggling host. Just then, a heavy thud of footsteps signaled the police and #39's arrival. As they burst into the hallway, I recognized another familiar face, Detective Sarah Martinez, my godmother and my mother and #39's best friend. Perfect timing, I remarked as Mark and #39's world unraveled around him. I believe everyone and #39's here now for the real reception. The following hours were a whirlwind of police statements and silent discussions in isolated rooms. I sat in what was meant to be our wedding suite, my white dress now symbolizing challenges overcome rather than promises made. Detective Martinez sat across from me, her familiar presence offering both solace and bittersweet reminders of my mother. "You did well, kid," she commented, closing her notebook. "Really well. But when did you first suspect something was amiss?" I smoothed my skirt, reflecting. It began with subtle inconsistencies, stories about his past that didn't and #39T add up, evasions regarding his family. The real breakthrough occurred 3 weeks ago. I recollected the rainy Tuesday afternoon, sifting through old photographs for a heritage display when an email alert appeared from an unfamiliar sender. "Before you marry Mark Henderson, we should talk," was all it said. Rachel and #39's email, Sarah acknowledged. She reached out to us around the same time. Yes, but I didn't and #39T know that back then. I almost discarded it as spam, but something led me to respond. When Rachel shared her story, it was like reading my own narrative 3 years earlier. The same charming businessman, rushed romance, and subtle asset consolidation. Sandra appeared in the doorway bringing tea. She and #39D refused to leave my side throughout. "Tell her about the ledger cat," Sandra urged. Gratefully accepting the tea, I narrated. After Rachel and #39's warning, I began investigating. Mark had insisted on updating our accounting system, yet I kept stumbling upon minor discrepancies, accounts being transferred inconsistently. I feigned ignorance about business affairs, and that and #39's when he grew careless. "Classic predator behavior," Sarah remarked. "They become reckless when they think they and #39V found easy prey." A summer smile played on my lips. He forgot I was raised here, understanding every aspect of our business before my mother fell ill. The night I uncovered those hidden accounts, I called Rachel. We spent hours comparing notes, discovering patterns. "And that and #39's when you contacted us," Sarah interjected. "Not yet," I stated, retrieving a leather-bound notebook from my bag. I needed irrefutable evidence. So I played along. Copies were made of everything he pressured me to sign. Notes were taken during business calls, and false information about additional properties was planted to see his reactions. Sandra sat beside me, our shoulders touching in silent solidarity. "The contractor trap was ingenious," Sandra added. Nodding, I elaborated. "I suspected he and #39D start exerting control pre-wedding, so I devised a fake renovation proposal with a contractor friend. Mark took the bait, immediately forging my signature to approve the work. That and #39's when I had everything necessary." "Why wait until the wedding?" Sarah inquired. Her expression suggested she already understood. "Because I wanted everyone to witness his true identity. No more charming facade, no more plausible deniability." I touched my mother and #39's pearls, now secure in my bag. Moreover, Rachel deserved to see him exposed. 3 years ago, nobody believed her. She lost everything due to his deceitful charm. About Rachel, Sarah leaned in. "You should know that after you departed from the reception hall, we found evidence in Mark and #39's study linking him to similar schemes in different states. The revelation hit like a blow. Other women?" "Yes, and they and #39 we all prepared to testify. With their statements, your evidence, and Rachel and #39's documentation, he won and #39T charm his way out of this." A knock diverted our attention. Another officer appeared, looking apologetic. "Detective Martinez, we need you downstairs." "Miss Collins, someone from the D&39's office wishes to speak with you." Standing and smoothing my dress one final time, I added, "There and-39's one more thing to see before we go." Producing a USB drive, I disclosed 2 days ago, I discovered emails between Mark and Anthony Carlton discussing potential investment opportunities targeting other women. Sarah and-39's eyes narrowed. "Anthony Carlton? Are you sure?" "Yes, why?" "Because he and-39's a person of interest in multiple fraud cases," she stated, already dialing her phone. Looking around the room that should have symbolized the start of my married life, I couldn't and-39 to ignore the irony. It became the setting where a criminal network was exposed. "Ready?" Sandra asked softly. I squared my shoulders almost. There and-39's one final task. I opened my banking app. Time to undo every unauthorized transaction he made in the last 6 months. My parents built this business on transparency, and I intend to restore that legacy. The ensuing days were a whirlwind of legal consultations and police interviews. I often found myself in the B&B and-39's library, my cherished childhood space, surrounded by documents chronicling Mark and-39's fraud. Rachel joined me, cradling a tea mug, appearing both exhausted and relieved. "I can and-39 believe you accomplished it," she marveled, shaking her head. "When I sent that email, I hoped simply to warn you in time, not dismantle an entire network." Managing a small smile, I concurred. Neither did I, but equally, I hadn't and-39 envisioned spending my honeymoon in FBI meetings either. Morning sunlight filtered through stained glass windows, casting vibrant patterns on the antique desk where my parents once planned their future. Agent Wilson appeared at the doorway, tie slightly loosened after hours of interviews. "We've completed the analysis of the USB drive you gave us," he said. "You'll want to hear this." Rachel and I exchanged a glance before following him to the small conference room of the B&B, now serving as a temporary investigation hub. Sarah Martinez was already there, surrounded by piles of papers, looking grimmer than I had ever seen her. "Catherine," she started, "what you've uncovered extends beyond Mark and Anthony Carlton. This is a sophisticated scheme targeting women who have inherited family businesses across multiple states. They're looking for properties with historical or significant real estate value." My stomach turned. "How many victims have you identified?" I asked. "Well, potential victims so far," Agent Wilson replied, spreading photographs across the table. 3 managed to fight back, including Rachel. 4 lost everything. The others are in various stages of being targeted. I picked up one of the photos showing a beautiful Victorian era theater in Boston. "Have you warned them?" "We're proceeding cautiously," Sarah explained. "These men have powerful connections and deep resources. We need to create an airtight case." A knock at the door made everyone turn. Sandra entered, carrying a stack of files. "You need to see this," she said, her voice tense. "I've been going through the B&B's old guest records and cross-referencing them with the dates in Mark's emails. He didn't just show up here by chance. They've been observing the business for months, ever since my mother's obituary was published. Despite the warm spring day, a cold feeling overcame me at the thought of them targeting me during my grief. "There's more," Sandra continued. "Remember the corporate retreat group that canceled at the last minute 6 months ago? The one that would have helped cover the property tax bill? I found emails suggesting Mark's associates engineered the cancellation to increase your financial stress." I gripped the edge of the table, anger replacing nausea. "They deliberately tried to make me desperate." "It's their pattern," Rachel added quietly. "They create problems, then swoop in with solutions. By the time you realize what's happening, they've already started legally separating you from your assets." Agent Wilson cleared his throat. "Miss Collins, we'd like to use your case to set up a sting operation. Several of their other targets are in the early stages of being courted by this network. If we can catch them in the act." "You want me to go public?" I stated. Sarah reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "Only if you're willing, but your story, especially the evidence you've gathered, could help protect others." Looking around the room at the people who helped me escape a nightmare, my eyes landed on a photo on the wall. My parents on the day they opened the B&B. Their faces full of pride and hope. "I'll do it," I said firmly, "but on one condition. We don't just expose the fraud. We create a support network for women like us." I gestured to Rachel and myself, a way to share information, resources, and warnings. Rachel's eyes lit up, like an early warning system. "Exactly," I responded. "These men prey on women when they're vulnerable, dealing with loss or struggling to keep family businesses afloat. They isolate us, making us feel like we're alone. Let's change that. Thondra was already pulling out her laptop. I can set up a secure website, something that looks like a business networking group on the surface, but is actually a fortress. A way for women to protect what they've built, I finished. Agent Wilson nodded approvingly. We can provide guidance on making it secure, ensuring any warnings can be verified to prevent false allegations. As the discussion continued, I felt something I hadn't experienced since finding Rachel's email: hope, not just for myself, but for all the women who might be spared what we'd gone through. There's one more thing, Sarah said, pulling out a final document. We found this in Mark's home office. It's a list of potential targets for the next 6 months. I took the paper with trembling hands, scanning the names and locations. Each one represented a woman who, like me, had no idea what was coming. Well, I said, straightening my shoulders, I guess we have work to do. A month after what would have been my wedding day, I stood in front of the B&B's ornate mirror, adjusting my blazer. Today wasn't about the past, it was about the future. The historic dining room downstairs was set up for our first business women's network meeting, a cover for what we'd come to call the Guardian's Circle. Everything's ready, Sandra announced, tablet in hand. We have 7 confirmed attendees, all vetted by Sarah's team. 3 are current targets of the network, 2 are previous victims who've rebuilt their lives, and 2 are legitimate business owners who can provide professional support. I touched my mother's pearls, now a symbol of strength rather than loss. And the security? The agents posing as staff, plus our new security system is fully operational. Nobody gets in or out without being logged. The precautions might have seemed excessive, but we'd learned the hard way that Mark's organization didn't take defeats lightly. Just last week, someone had tried to hack our newly established support website. Instead of finding vulnerable women's information, they walked right into an FBI cyber trap. M. Collins, one of the undercover agents, appeared at the door. Your first guest has arrived, and there's something else you should know. I followed him to the security room we'd set up in what used to be the B&B study. Sarah was already there, reviewing footage from our external cameras. Look who just parked across the street, she said, pointing to a sleek black car. My heart skipped a beat. Anthony Carlton. He's getting bold, Sarah muttered. We're desperate. Either way, this might be the break we need. Over the past month, we'd uncovered more about Carlton's role in the organization. He wasn't just Mark's partner. He was the architect of their entire operation. While Mark and others played charming suitors, Carlton managed the financial side, creating elaborate schemes to transfer assets and cover their tracks. Should we cancel the meeting? Sandra asked. I watched the security feed as more cars arrived carrying women who had traveled from different states, each with their own story of near misses or hard-learned lessons. No, we're done hiding. In fact, a plan began forming in my mind. Catherine, Sarah warned, seeing my expression. Whatever you're thinking. We have 7 successful business women about to meet in one room, I said. Women they've either targeted or failed to con. What better way to smoke out their entire operation than to let them think we're vulnerable? Rachel, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. She's right. They're watching us anyway. Why not control what they see? The next hour was a flurry of activity as we modified our plans. The legitimate networking meeting would proceed as planned, but with an added layer of strategic information sharing. Let Carlton and his associates think they were gathering intelligence on potential targets. In reality, every conversation, every business card exchanged, every shared detail would be carefully crafted to lead them right where we wanted. As I welcomed our guests, I couldn't help but notice how different each woman was, yet how similar their stories. Ayanna, whose family's artisanal food business had almost fallen into Mark's hands 3 years ago. Elena, currently being courted by one of Carlton's associates, playing along while gathering evidence. Jessica, whose historic theater was saved at the last minute when she connected with Rachel. Before we begin, I addressed the group. I want to share something my mother used to say. Success isn't just about building something valuable. It's about protecting what matters. I glanced at the window, knowing that Carlton or his associates were likely watching. Today we're going to talk about protection, about recognition, about turning vulnerability into strength. As the meeting progressed, I watched these remarkable women share their experiences, their warnings, their triumph stories. Each piece of information shared was a carefully placed breadcrumb leading our observers down a path of their own making. There's movement, Sarah whispered in my earpiece. Carlton's making calls. Lots of them. I smiled, continuing my presentation on modernizing historic businesses, a topic that had particular meaning to everyone in the room. The key, I said clearly. Sandra's tablet suddenly illuminated with a message. Our cyber team had flagged numerous attempts to infiltrate the business profiles we'd methodically arranged online. They were biting, but observing these women aiding one another with sincere advice blended with our orchestrated deceptions, I realized we had formed something more invaluable than a mere sting. We had developed a genuine network of solidarity, protection, and empowerment. The sound of vehicles pulled my gaze through the antique windows, revealing several unmarked cars subtly closing in on Carlton's location. Sarah exited the room, coordinating with her team. "Ladies," I said, maintaining a calm demeanor, "let's pause for coffee and perhaps a hint of justice." The ensuing hour was a display of precision, almost as if choreographed, as our group stepped out for a coffee break on the B&B's wraparound porch. I observed Anthony Carlton's world unraveling. He must have realized something was amiss when the first FBA car parked next to his. Through the window, I saw his pristine suit in sharp contrast with his frantic gestures as he clutched his phone. But it was too late. Sarah's voice came into my earpiece. "It's done. His accounts are all frozen." Watching him being led away in cuffs brought a fierce satisfaction, thinking of all the women who had lost it all to his schemes. But the true triumph was in what we had built to prevent more like him. Athrun, Elena softly called as a taxi arrived and Patricia Morrison, Carlton's wife, emerged. I stopped the agents from intercepting her. "Let her through," I instructed. I had learned enough about the network to understand not everyone involved was a willing participant. Patricia climbed the porch, her designer bag held tight. Her eyes were red but determined. "I have something you need to see," she said, revealing a thick folder full of evidence against Carlton. Rachel approached her with understanding. "You were trapped too, weren't you?" Patricia nodded, tears flowing. "He married me for my family's connections," she confessed. "He used them to look legitimate, and when I figured it out, he made sure I knew what would happen if I spoke up." Guiding her to a seat, I signaled Sandra for another coffee. "You're safe now, and what you brought will protect many others." Patricia continued with more strength, revealing, "I know who's really behind the operation. Carlton and Mark were just the public faces. The true manipulator is someone unexpected." Before she could finish, there was a commotion at the front gate. George Whitman, a known real estate figure, was arguing with security. Realization hit. He had been the one who first linked my family to their accountant. Whitman attempting remote deletion was reported by our cyber team, but we had backups. Understanding dawned on Sarah. Whitman orchestrated this for decades, she realized. All those visits he made to the B&B, feigning concern and offering financial advice. Patricia tremblingly produced yet another paper, vindicating her claims. The organization was dubbed Property Acquisition Through Strategic Marriages, or PASM. The audacity of reducing women's lives to a business strategy with procedures filled me with rage. Yet amongst our group I saw resilient warriors, not victims. "Ladies," I announced, "let's show them the peril of underestimating businesswomen." A masterful operation unfurled as the FBA executed the arrests, and our network launched into action. Ayanna, with her media savviness, began shaping the story. Elena, legally trained, organized the evidence, while Jessica, a tech entrepreneur by day, collaborated with our cyber team to track every digital trace of their illicit instances. As dusk enveloped the B&B, I settled into my mother's cherished rocking chair, now a symbol of our collective victory. Sarah joined, visibly weary yet content. "Your parents would be proud," she reflected, "not only because you brought them down, but for what you're establishing in its place." Pondering on my mother's well-worn railing, I responded, "We're saving more than businesses. We're reclaiming legacies, dreams, and futures." Rachel, with renewed resilience, reported, "The website's drawing attention already. 3 women have surfaced with similar tales. Varied faces, identical tactics." As the implications washed over me, I stood, realizing the night was just beginning. Liberated from Mark's schemes and the fear that had muted us, a new era dawned, a bastion of women supporting one another, wielding their chains of isolation against them. The B&B, once their objective, was now the nucleus of their demise, merely the commencement of something greater. The ensuing weeks brought revelations that expanded our understandings beyond anticipation. Sitting at the B&B turned Business Heritage Protection Network HQ, the enormity of our discoveries continued to unfurl, each file another summer tale. Sandra with yet another folder, Amanda Brown. In Seattle, they pursued her family's restaurant after her grandmother died. As I perused, the pattern was depressingly predictable. Business consultant promised modernization, Sandra described. Then a critic sunk their ratings, leading to a PR intervention. Her expression darkened further. Rachel and Elena enter, laptops in hand. "You need to see this," Elena prompted, sharing their data analysis. Alarmed by the vastness, I leaned back, grasping that it was not a recent scheme but a legacy operation. "Whitman didn't invent this," Rachel declared. "He inherited it." The scheme relentlessly predated businesses with rich histories, targeting women-owned enterprises. They pursued more than properties. They seized tales, legacies, trust, and valuable commodities. Sarah entered with triumphant weariness. "Whitman is cooperating. Aims for nation-wide co-ops have emerged, each replicating the foundational blueprint. The scope struck not solitary but a fraudulent franchise." Gazing through windows overlooking my mother's lovingly tended roses, lessons in patience and nurturing resonated profoundly. "We must expand," I declared, safeguarding businesses and preempting such exploitation. Elena, already devising legal frameworks, replied, "We can create trust protections fortifying against such predation." Sandra had engineered an A-warning system to track suspicious business patterns, complementing this effort. Rachel, resolute, concluded discussions as closures loomed. But our mission had only just begun. They thought targeting us was a sign of our weakness, but they unintentionally crafted their worst nightmare. A coalition of women aware of every deceptive maneuver. My screen flashed with a new message. A woman had reached out via our secure website. Her words stirred the familiar blend of anger and resolve. This tale could have mirrored mine if not for Rachel's alert. "Ladies," I began, turning my attention back to the group, "it's time to move to phase 2. For several hours, we developed our expansion strategy. Elena would lead seminars on legal defense mechanisms. Rachel would collaborate with business schools to alert budding entrepreneurs about these traps, while Sandra would manage our expanding database of fraudulent tactics and red flags. As for me, later that evening, I addressed a gathering of women in the newly refurbished conference room of the B&B, with attendees flying in from across the nation. There were victims among them, alongside those currently playing along to gather proof, all prepared to push back. I believed I had simply acquired a building when I inherited this place. I started, but my parents passed down something far greater. True legacy lies not in the property but in what you do with it. Drawing strength from my mother's pearls, I pressed on. Every woman present had encountered someone attempting to rob them of more than just their business, but their legacy. They mistook our moments of vulnerability for opportunities, making a critical miscalculation. Meeting the eyes of each woman, I saw the same determination that drove me to resist. They aimed to isolate us, wrongly believing it would render us weak. Instead, it unveiled exactly what we needed to construct a community capable of subverting their schemes. The room buzzed with energy as these dedicated women exchanged insights, approaches, and encouragement. A real estate agent who discovered her broker's involvement in a similar Miami scheme, an art gallery owner who barely avoided a trap targeting dealers, and a bookstore owner pursuing a network targeting historical businesses in Boston. Watching them, I recognized we had established something unprecedented, a countermeasure against decades of systematic fraud. More importantly, we had forged a sisterhood of resilience and support. My phone vibrated with a text from Sarah. Whitman exposed 3 more networks poised for interstate expansion. I smiled, contemplating the women we could guide, the legacies we could secure. "Always," I replied. The setting sun cast a warming glow through the stained glass windows lovingly restored by my parents. In its light, I didn't just see my triumph over such schemes but the establishment of a movement ensuring no woman would face these exploiters alone. We had transformed a day of betrayal into a sanctuary of protection, a strength network, a legacy of justice, and we were only beginning. A year since the day of my near wedding, I stood at the B&B's grand entrance, observing women arriving for our inaugural Legacy Protection Conference. The old house gleamed with intention, its Victorian grandeur now a symbol of steadfastness, not vulnerability. Final count is 312, reported Sandra, holding a tablet. We had to decline some. Next year we might need a bigger space. Recollecting, I smiled at the journey. From a runaway bride to hosting a national convention. Mom would have struggled to believe it. Oh, she would have rebutted, Sarah joining. No longer officially involved, Sarah had taken a special role with a new FBI task force against marriage fraud schemes. She always believed you shared her spirit. The morning's keynote was set to begin, with Rachel leading by recounting her narrative and unveiling our new program. A nationwide initiative empowering female entrepreneurs. Elena's curriculum on familial business legal safeguarding spanned generations. Prepping to ascend the stage, glimpsing my reflection in an antique mirror, I was adorned with my mom's pearls, yet otherwise transformed. The woman on the brink of relinquishing her heritage was replaced by someone wise, stronger, determined. Before introducing our first speaker, I commenced. 1 year ago, I lived a fairy tale, but it wasn't a romance. It was a high story where I was the target. An understanding murmur passed through each woman there had either endured similar ordeals or knew someone who had. Here's what our would-be thieves failed to grasp. Targeting women who have built, inherited, or protected family businesses isn't just about assets. It attacks generations of dreams, sacrifices, and love. Scanning the crowd, I paused. Our network, in its first year, has uncovered 12 fraud schemes in 8 states. We've stopped 37 business takeovers, recovered assets above $40 million, yet our true success is not in these figures. Stepping from the podium, I gestured to the assembly. Every woman here has a story. Each has faced someone erroneously assuming vulnerability equaled opportunity. They thought they'd create victims. Instead, they forged warriors. An electric atmosphere buzzed as I continued. Today, we're more than survivors narrating tales. We're architects crafting a future that leaves no room for predators. Equipped with awareness, legal acumen, and an unwavering community, women will no longer venture alone. Tapping into the strength of my mother's pearls one more time, I narrated how my story began with a wedding revelation intended to break me but instead awakened a surprising truth. United, we are formidable. As I signaled for Rachel, discerning Patricia's entrance from the back, previously a key state witness and now an invaluable advisor dismantling the same network that ensnared her, she nodded, confirming another racket exposed. One more woman saved from my near fate. The day continued with workshops, strategic discussions, and networking opportunities, yet the most potent moments were the quieter exchanges. Women sharing contacts, exchanging resources, and forming bonds stronger than any legal safeguard. As sunset commenced at our debut conference, I found my way back to the library where it all began, joined by Sandra, Rachel, and Elena, each raising a champagne glass. To the wedding that never was, Rachel toasted, prompting laughter. To the network that is, Elena added. Raising my glass, contemplating our achievements and the journey ahead, I whispered, to every woman who ever had to start anew and reducing how many must. That night, after the last guest exited, I strolled through the tranquil halls of my family's B&B. Each room was imbued with memories of my parents and the past year's metamorphosis. The parlor where Mark first charmed had transformed into a venue for support gatherings. The dining room where our wedding feast toppled now hosted sessions that dismantled 3 fraudulent networks. Glancing at my laptop one final time, a new post on our secure board caught my eye. I think I'm being targeted. The same pattern described. What do I do first? Without a pause, I began typing. First, know you're not alone. We're here, we believe you, and we know exactly what to do next. Welcome to the sisterhood. The B&B creaked reassuringly, a childhood comfort now infused with a sense of purpose. This place was beyond inheritance. It symbolized a beacon of hope, a fortress of empowerment and testament to the potency of united women. Wedding day, supposed to end my independence, marked the genesis of a movement. In looking forward, I knew every woman entering our network would help continue this unfolding tale of triumph, resilience, and change.